You got Mac and Mac here, McMullen and McDonald. We are graced with the presence of one Chris Franklin from NJ.com. He's back in church again with the crossover. Good to have you. Good to have you here with us today, Chris. Appreciate it greatly.
The Church of the Gloucester County Times.
I have to go to confession a couple times. I need to absolve myself from journalistic stuff I've done. I had not used the Oxford comma in the right position. And the lead, I have to absolve myself now.
Peace be with you, Chris. That's two Hail Marys.
What's since and I didn't mean to do this, but now that you went there, I'm going to follow up. I could get you in a lot of trouble by saying what's the thing that most sucks about the job that you have. So I won't say that. But instead, what is the toughest thing about your job, your outlet, the people you do it for, the team that you cover? What's the toughest thing in Chris Franklin's occupational life these days?
I just kind of wish he had more football. I'm one of those guys I like being, I know it's a practice and you don't really get to, there's not much going on. I just like being near the field. I like seeing all the little details. I'm that geek that looks going, wow, they have the new drill. Let's see how they incorporate it to the office or how this one is. That's the one thing I'm like, I have a problem. I have a serious problem. Like, I'll watch the generator, give me all the tape.
I'm with you, Chris. I was all excited by the 7-on-9. I had never seen a 7-on-9 drill. You usually see 9-on-7, where it's offense with the 9, defense. You work on the running game. When people used to work on the running game, the Eagles had a 7-on-9 where they left the 2 edge rushers out there on 7-on-7s, just to sort of mimic the pass rush and have the guys chase behind. Yeah, I'm a geek with that kind of stuff. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially 7-on-9. Get a truer feel because there's only so much those orange pads when they're coming towards you, simulating the attack. Okay, it feels like a Madden part of the game.
Broom, broom, blow over the broom, something like that.
I like that stuff. I miss. That's the one thing I'd probably say that, and I wish we had more people down in South Jersey, but that's about it.
The massive disrespect shown Jalen Hurts by Chris Sims, ranking him number 7 coming into this year.
7's pretty good.
I'm beating the snot out of Chris Sims, and I'm sorry. At some point, you just got to go. This guy's poked me in the eye 3 straight years. I picked him outside the top 40. He plays in the 20s. Oop, I look like an idiot. I pick him number 23, almost wins the MVP, his second best quarterback in the league. Oops, I look like an idiot. How do you come back again and put Trevor Lawrence ahead of Jalen Hurts? Do you think Hurts gets anything out of this as far as motivation goes, or is he just so focused and locked in that idiot talk show hosts like Jody McDonald get more worked up about this than he actually does?
Chris Sims did a good job because he got us talking about it. Because I think a lot at this point, I think now it's just like, okay, let's see how I can do this. I get riled up. It's just, I just look at that and I'm looking at the list and some of the things I'm like, okay, yeah, 7. Now I probably put him 2. I probably put 3, 2 or 3, somewhere in that range. Because to me, it's really tight when it comes to him and Josh Allen. I just look at I think he's getting to talk, and I think for motivation. No, I think the biggest motivation for Hurts was walking off the field, having to look back at the yellow and red confetti that was flying around, and he had to walk back to the locker room knowing that he wasn't going to hold the Vince Lombardi trophy. I think that's a bigger thing as well too. But yeah, I think that was just more. I think that list more and more from Sims to someone things yeah, he wants to hold on to his initial thought, but at the same time, it's all right, let's see how many people I can get talking about this.
Yeah, well, top 40 versus. He was outed. I'm pretty sure he was out of the top 40. To number 7. He's already said, all right, I made a mistake. So now it's just parsing, who the top 7 quarterbacks are. And I think Jalen's above that, but I don't think it's tremendous disrespect, like not using the Oxford comma. I'm a big fan of the Oxford comma. That's disrespect. But nonetheless, I do think it's kind of amazing. We were just talking about this last hour, Chris. We don't talk about Jalen Hurts. The only time we talk about him is when Chris Sims pops his head up and gets us talking about it. Now he's this constant. It was the exact opposite last year. You were on the show. We were talking about Jalen Hurts. Can Jalen Hurts
every day?
Jalen Hurts do that? Now, whether he's number 7, number 5, number 2, number 1, as he was on one day in February, even though he lost the game because he played better than Patrick Mahomes, I will go to my grave saying that on that particular day. He's good. It's kind of amazing the progression in 12 months.
I think that's what a lot of hard work does for you. You saw that put in whatever when he went out there, whatever he learned while he was out there in Southern California, and coupled with actually being in the same system 2 years in a row. I think that was the biggest key for him. And now you get him in probably for what like basic term, like pretty much the same system now, probably with some little variations now in year 3. I think he could really take another level and make another jump for this as well too. So I think, and I also think it comes with when you have a low key, low demeanor like he does. I think that plays a part of it too. Because if you were doing shrooms or you're out in the wilderness like Aaron Rodgers, I think everything you're like, oh my goodness, look at this, look at Jalen. Now I think that when you hear like, okay, he's talking when he's doing like commercials or something like that, or he's playing softball, he's playing baseball, stuff like. I think that's when you start to see like, all right, yeah, he's just mellow, chill. We don't talk to him about him as much when it comes to like that. So,
all right, Johnny made reference earlier in joking fashion about stopping the run and protecting against the run. Nobody thinks about the run until they have to think about the run. But I'm thinking about the run today because the Eagles put forth 2 running backs made available to you guys in the media to be able to question, and they give deference to the guys who've already been here. Boston Scott, who's, believe it or not, one of the longer tenured guys on the team. Certainly he is numero uno in the backfield, but his now 5 years with the team actually adds up pretty damn quick. Kenny Gainwell also accessed yesterday, but they went out and got 2 talented running backs, one injury prone, one slight underachieving from first round draft or early second round draft status. What's your read on how the Eagles are going to handle the run this year, Chris Franklin? I don't think we've asked you about this just yet. More than last year, less than last year, different than last year. What is the new Eagle running game going to look like in 2023 under new offensive coordinator Brian Johnson?
I think it'll just be a tick lower. I think if they were trying to set a little bit more stuff to pass, because it was interesting when you have game. We've heard all the time when Nick first got in here how they wanted to pass, how they wanted to throw, and they got that. Because they were concerned about Hurts at the time. But now I think that you added some running backs that have better capabilities receiving the ball. I think it's one of those things where you just try to go ahead and move the ball down the field, especially early on, try to jump on teams early. Maybe that involves DeAndre Swift. I think who I think is going to wind up being the starter. I think they go to him. I think Penny gets a tad touch fewer snap reps to him, rushes to him. Then I think you mix in Gainwell as well to your third down guy, and Scott being your situational guy too. So I think it's gonna be a tad little, but I think having Swift and Penny and with Gainwell and even Scott to a degree too, I think you have more of an option to start throwing the ball to the running backs and spreading this offense out even more, spreading the defense out even more.
So you don't want Dalvin Cook, Chris?
Nah.
DeAndre Hopkins, Leonard Floyd. They didn't get Leonard Floyd. You don't want Dalvin Cook because it's pretty clear that, back in the day, the Eagles wanted Dalvin Cook. They were really interested in Dalvin Cook in the draft. Minnesota jumped up and the Eagles went Sidney Jones. They were going to draft Dalvin Cook. Kind of silly at this point.
Yeah, if they didn't address it, Miles Sanders went elsewhere, and you only had say Gainwell Scott, I think Cook would have been your guy. But also, I think even now, I think he really wants to go down to South Florida and start enjoying that Dolphins team. And when more and more you look at that Dolphins game coming up, it's going to be really. If they add Cook to that, it's going to be potent. But I think, yeah, right now you roll what you have because you still have those weapons on the outside of wide receiver as well too. So. And you want to compliment them. You don't need a dominant back in this system. You don't need a guy that I need the ball 20 times, 25 times, because we've seen that when you parse it, it just diversifies this offense even more. So I don't think they need Cook right now.
Yesterday, John and I were debating a little bit on the Eagles' third wide receiver. We know who the top two are. We know what Quez Watkins' strengths and or weaknesses are. We're almost to the point where a camp is around the corner. Howie was good last year in that he made late in preseason acquisitions, the biggest of which, of course, was Chauncey Gardner. Do you think that they are going to start the season with the wide receivers that are in camp right now? Or do you think there's an upgrade out there for him at wide receiver?
I think they're going to start with the four. The main four is Olamide Zaccheaus. I throw him in there as well too, because I look at even though Quez took that step back and he still has that speed to you have to honor it because I think it's more like a 40, 50, 55% chance, he's going to catch that ball in that situation going against a safety and judge it. You hope it gets up to 60 in that range. So I look at him, I feel saying he's going to get a lot of play just for what he can do for everything else underneath. And I think Zaccheaus, it's going to surprise people. To me, Zaccheaus is going to be like a Jason Avant type guy. Like he's not going to blow past you. He's not going to run you see the wheel routes and he's going to be a burner, but he's going to be that guy, you see the first down marker, sits down, find it. Hey, I'm open, I'm a target, and they hit him that way. I think he's more of that one. So I think given that you also have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, given those other elements that you have on there, I think they stick with the four, barring unless one of those guys get injured. If they do, then yeah, I think they're in trouble.
One of my criticisms of Nick and Shane, and there weren't a lot of them last year because the offense was so good, but one of them was, you've heard Nick kind of pay lip service that everybody plays everywhere at wide receiver. AJ can play. Obviously, he's an X, but he can play in the slot. He can play Z. Devontae can play in the slot. Quez can play in the slot, did play in the slot. Well, I think he played in the slot too much. I think Quez is a natural sort of Z receiver, just run by people. That's what he does. He scares people because he can run a 4.32 or whatever. And if you look at his numbers, had about 700, and I'm going off the top of my head, but he had 770 snaps, something like that, something in that range. 500 were in the slot. It's like, why isn't Devontae in the slot on key third downs and Quez outside? And I think they have a little bit of a luxury now with Olamide because he's a natural slot receiver, and maybe they can piecemeal it a little bit better. But Devontae and AJ can do anything. And we had Mike Quick on the show last week, Chris, and I asked him this question. And he doesn't like to pigeonhole guys. But Mike was really good too. In other words, just because Mike can do it and AJ can do it and Devontae can do it, that doesn't mean Quez Watkins can do it and Greg Ward can do it and Britton Kobe can do it. They do certain things well. Why not use them in what they do well?
You can. I think just when you have the versatility that you can use on when you throw the threat, because it's almost like one of the things like, here comes Quez. Well, we know what he's going to do inside this middle here. He's going to be either a go or it's going to be a stop route or something like that, or a slant. I mean, when you get a three, it's predictable. I want to see it personally. If I was going to I know you have Dallas Goedert. You need to get him his touches and his snaps on the field. You can even split him out wide if you want to. I want to see more four wide receiver or really spread them out because I think it just puts that much stress on the defense and the fact that, okay, you have to account for all these receivers. You have to make sure that don't get burnt deep. You have to make sure you got to watch underneath, especially with Brown and Goddard. And, oh, yeah, you got a running back. It can be Swift who can catch the ball at the backfield. Oh, yeah, you still have to account for Jalen Hurts back there trying to run around. If he doesn't see something he likes, he's going to take off and get you on the outside. So I want to see him spread the ball out a little bit more. I think he can also get a little bit better especially with that offensive line. I think you can get some good run looks as well, too, when you start to spread people out. So getting back to the slot thing, I think I like to see Quez. I wouldn't mind seeing Quez on the outside a little more. I think I'd even put when you have Brown and Devonta Smith on one side, you get Quez on the outside, well, media in the middle in the slot. So that way you give a little look and you have to respect that a little bit. You get him to start to look as well, too. You have all those options available. So I like the fact that you can move him around a little bit, but I think he's more. I think he's. You can still do that. You still need to learn all the positions on that
All
offense.
right, I want your crystal ball guess here, and then I also want you to tell those streaming in how you think the Eagles make a decision like this. Is Britton Covey going to be here? He was basically the only guy who returned punts for the Eagles last year. They threw Devontae back there a handful of times. I had 2 or 3, not a lot. And you don't want to put him back there that often because you can't afford to lose him. Because we're back to Quez Watkins as a 2 rather than a 3. That's not good. Is Kobe going to make the team just because he's their only punt returner? Is there anyone else that you think could make the roster who did some returning in college and ends up being a guy they can actually use on the field at some point somewhere just in case, whereas I don't think Britton Covey's getting on the field if he's not returning punts. How's that punting competition decided, punt returner? Do they do it via practice? Is it the joint practices, the all-important joint practices, which good on both you guys so you don't have to get on a plane to go see them this year. The unimportant preseason games. How are they going to decide who's going to be the punt returner for the Eagles?
It's going to be consistency during practice, and I think in those games, because you get used to seeing those 2 punters all the time. You get to use how the ball's coming off their legs. I think it's going to be more of those things where those joint practices could help, and also the gains. But I think this team carries 6 wide receivers, and Covey's going to be one of them, because the one thing that they really pride themselves on is not turning that ball and muffing the punts and giving teams a chance to basically have the ball deep in their territory. So he was able to consistently catch the ball. We've seen him when it comes to either practice and mostly any game, stuff like that. He did a good job making sure the ball didn't hit the ground. So I think he's going to be a guy. I think he makes the team as that 5. I think if you're looking for a 6 wide receiver, I think or backup, the other guy who would be a good punt returner, you don't want to bring him in that situation is Devonta Smith.
Right.
Yeah, they have Olamizi Zaccheaus doing this stuff in a pinch. I mean, you can have Watkins doing it in a pinch. You can even have Slay doing it in a pinch too, but you don't want to take your spot brand.
Quez has got plenty of opportunities.
I like Quez as a kickoff returner,
not a punt returner.
I think he's more of a kickoff returner for me if I had to use him back there, but to give him a head start. But hey, you probably call fair catch now with that stupid rule. But yeah, that's about it.
That's true. I think Britton's going to make this team. People kind of slept on him late in the season. He started getting some returns when the blocking got better. He had a big return in the Super Bowl that was kind of overshadowed by the other guy, but nonetheless, he had a big return. And he looks quicker. We only saw him once. We'll get to see him again tomorrow, but he looks quicker this year. I think there's a big leap from year 1 to year 2, typically with young players. I don't worry about him as the punt returner, but I do worry about the depth. But it's a luxury, right? I mean, if you lose a player like A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, you're screwed. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Jamar Chase or Tyreek Hill or insert superstar receiver name. No team is equipped to replace that type of player. Yet, I think in Philadelphia, everyone expects the Eagles to be equipped to replace that type of player. It's not possible, is it?
It's not. You'd have to shift a little bit. I think you probably have to use a lot more Dallas Goedert in that aspect, because you try to use him basically as another receiver as well, like a true receiver in that aspect. Because I think he'd be a guy that they had to fill in, and almost because of your quasi outside guy, you can try to do that. But it's tough when you lose an impact guy that defensive coordinators have to make sure they cover or make sure they account for on the field at all times. It's really tough. I think personally the bigger competition to watch is like the 6th guy. I think there's Greg Ward. I think you got Ngata and Hazel. I think that's where you start to see really who's going to thing. And I think if you need another punt returner in that case, you still have Greg Ward in the watch, who's done as well too. You're not going to get those 10, 20, 30-yard return possibilities, but you got somebody to safely catch it.
If Britton Covey is a lock for one of the wide receiver spots, you better hope for not having injuries. Forget about the fact that the drop-off from A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, whoever going to replace him, is a girth as wide as the Grand Canyon. But then you got to go ahead and replace I'm sorry. And I'm sure he's a nice guy. You guys have talked to him. How good a guy is Britton Covey, by the way? Good dude, or
maybe the greatest guy in existence. I don't know. He's in the conversation. He's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy in the world. But
right. And I kind of feel bad, but I'm sorry. The Eagles need a better depth at wide receiver than Britton Covey.
well, he's not. He's not going to be the backup to AJ or Devontae. That's Quez. That's Alameda. He's going to be the punt returner. That's his role. And if you're down to number 5 or number 6, if you keep 6, as Chris as then Joseph Nada, for instance, he would leap Britton Covey, or Hazelwood would leap Britton Covey if he had to play. But if you're down that bar, all I'm trying to say is you're screwed anyway. So, I mean, then you got to go about it a different way. Then you got to go about it a different way. Dallas Goedert's got to be your star. And, the running game becomes more important. The running backs, then you do have to get the ball maybe to DeAndre Swift in the passing game. You got to go about it a different way is what I'm trying to say. Agree or disagree?
I agree with that, but I'm sorry. Right now, your depth chart's your depth chart. And Chris just told us, Britton Covey's going to be on the team. You told us you're going to be one of the 6 wide receivers. If they could find anybody who could return punts close to what Covey does and can actually be a legitimate guy to play from the line of scrimmage, yeah, I'd be looking to do that if I were the Eagles. But that's and I feel bad because you tell me Covey is like the nicest guy, and I'm bad mouthing him here on Birds 365.
Well, he's Mormon, so they are straight laced, as they say.
All right,
is Dante Hall coming out of retirement?
Yeah.
Let's throw that. It's going to be rough.
Easier said than done to find these types of players.
Basically, what it comes down to is Jody McDonald's a jerk. I get that. All right. Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis? Who is there more pressure on coming into this year, Chris? Because one was drafted a little bit higher and, in most people's opinion, should have been a lot higher. Jordan Davis went where Jordan Davis was supposed to go. And the Eagles jumped up to make sure they were in position to take him. They traded up to get him at a spot that he figured to go. If he wasn't going to go there, he's going to go to the next spot anyway. Most people had Jalen Carter as the potential first overall pick in the draft before the season happened. He had his off-field issues, but everybody loves his talent level. Who's there more pressure on, the first-year dog or the second-year dog?
I think it's more on Jordan Davis. I really do, because I think when you look at what he's going to be asked to do in this defense, trying to control the middle and trying to be the person that is going to require 2 or 3 players to block him in the middle, I think that, and if he doesn't do that, I think that you're going to see a rough year for this defense, because you need, especially him in the middle, when he wasn't playing as well as he could, and when you start to look at when the Eagles had those issues in the middle of the season when their teams were running against them consistently before they had to get Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, it just kept it just is a domino effect, because you keep the offense on the side on the sidelines. You're just wearing down a defense overall, and just becomes an easier move. So I think there's more pressure on him for him to play to the level they expect him to play. I mean, Jalen Carter, he's going to be relied on a lot, I think, early on, especially as well, too, given a look at the rotation, what he can do in that defense and everything else. But I think you can get by with where he's going to play on that defensive line. I think you can be okay with that. But if you don't get Davis to get that pressure in the middle, you're affecting the other rest of the defensive line. You're affecting those linebackers who are not the biggest guys to begin with. So if you start doing that, that could have a domino effect, I think, down the line this season if he doesn't play well.
By the way, I think you're 100% right, Chris, in everything you just said. But I think the bigger reason why Jordan is under more pressure, and Jody can tell you, I've said this from day one, he's not getting stats, and people want to see stats, and they want to see sacks, and they want to see tackles. And even if he's doing his job, there's going to be a lot of people that say, Jordan Davis didn't do this, Jordan Davis doesn't do that. And he might be the most impactful, keeping people off Nakobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow. I think people forget, before he had the high ankle sprain, he was playing really, really well.
Playing well, yep.
And the Eagles fell apart after Marlon Tuipulotu got hurt and Marvin Wilson couldn't hold up. And that's when they called up Linval. And then they're in deep Super Bowl mode and he missed a month, and Linval was playing well, and they were like, well, let's let the veteran. And they kind of pulled it back on Jordan Davis. But I think he was playing well before he got hurt. I'm more concerned about the conditioning, the injury aspect to it, because if he gets hurt, again, what are you going to do? You're going to call Linval again? I mean, he's out there. I guess he can come back, but they don't have a backup. Maybe Noah Ellis, Christian's brother. We haven't gotten to see him. He's coming back from an Achilles tear. He's 350. Maybe he can do it. I don't know. I don't know that much about him. He's a really important player, but I just don't think people will recognize success without stats that are put in front of their base.
Here's my concern with Jordan Davis if he goes down with an injury again, like he did last year. And John, you're right. He was playing damn well in the first month of the season, and you saw the difference with him out of the lineup until they got Sue and Joseph to come in and fill that void. There was a big-time issue here. Here's my concern this year. If Davis goes out in late September, something like that, with an injury, they put in the call to Linval Joseph, and he says, call me after the holiday. I don't want to put in and Howie goes, Columbus Day. And he says, oh, no, Thanksgiving. Got big Thanksgiving plans. So call me after that holiday, and I should be ready to gear it up and go for you guys. That's one of the downsides of guys who are just part-time players. And when I say part-time, I don't mean during the game. I mean during the season. And, John, what was the name that you came up with it for? Not ring chasing.
The mercenary markets.
The mercenary market. I think if you're in the mercenary market, you get to dictate when mercenaries come back and fight again. And
by the way,
for the Eagles.
And Ndamukong Suh was on, I think it was football game day morning, whatever it's called. I want to give him, Jody, you're a fan.
Good Morning Football.
Good Morning Football. Thank you. I think it was on that show. He said, yeah, I'm done with training camp. Like he still wants to play, but he admits I'm not going to training camp. I'm not doing this off-season nonsense. I think Howie created a market, and I think it's going to be a small group, but guys who've made a lot of money. So, and Ndamukong Suh doesn't need the money.
Right.
He doesn't need the aggravation, but he can still play. Just wait and pick. All right, who's looks like a Super Bowl team? You need a defensive tackle? Yeah, I'll play for you. I think it's smart, but Linval's made a lot of money. I don't think there's a lot of people in that category, but I think he created sort of a new market, like the buyout market in the NBA. I think, Howie's ahead of the curve, man. That's what I give him credit for.
Yeah, that's where you gotta hope by that time you gotta get out to a good start, because if there's something like, say, about if they're treading water at 500 and like looking at a wild card team,
that's not gonna work.
Good luck. Like, come to us. You can play. You can be the 6th seed and you can play on the road. Like, I'm gonna go try to get a ring over here. I'll see y'all later. Good luck, though. Yeah.
Chris Frank, put the pressure on you. We were talking about who's got more pressure, which of the two defensive tackles from Georgia on the Eagles going to have the biggest pressure. I'm putting it on you. I'm going to put it on McMullen afterwards, but I'm going to let you go first. Tomorrow you got your last media session for a while because there's no mandatory mini camp, so you're going to have to wait till action camp before you get to talk to any Eagles again. Sirianni's basically a given. You got to get the coach once on the record before the camp shows up. Player and or other coach. John's gone down the Brandon Graham route a couple of times now, and Brandon Graham missing.
We haven't gotten Brandon. That's weird, man.
What the hell? Hey, McMullen gave me 100%, or it's going to be Brandon Graham, and he hasn't shown up yet. So you got to give me one other guy, coach or player, not named Nick Sirianni, who you guys will get to talk to tomorrow.
I'm cheating hard. I'm completely cheating on this one. I'm saying Jalen Hurts. No, I'm cheating on that. I'm cheating.
Yeah. Actually, we already know. We're only getting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm cheating on this one. Yeah, But yeah, if I'm going off the board and say that Hurts is not
So do you
going
think it's
to
going to be just
Oh.
Hurts and Sirianni tomorrow, or is it going to be
Yes.
somebody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are. That's why we had the Tuesday media availability, because we're not going to get
It's just
Thursday.
two. It's
Just
the
two.
coach and the quarterback tomorrow.
Yes.
It's getaway day, yeah. I'm
Getaway.
a bit like
Everybody's
it's
out of there.
the last day. It's like the last day of school. Like go out.
Everybody's
Like,
out. Out.
Yeah.
Just don't go to cheerleaders. Don DeSandro is saying. Just don't go to
Good foot on
cheerleaders.
that one.
Go over the bridge.
Was cheerleaders where Aguilar got caught?
Yes. Yes.
That was the joint. All right, good.
There were two other players with him that shall remain nameless, but if people remember, they remember.
Chris Franklin, you're allowed to go to cheerleaders. You're going to have to answer to a higher power over your shoulder, but neither McMullen or I are going to call you on the carpet for that.
It's a fine establishment. I'm just saying the Eagles stay away from cheerleaders.
Any of those type of establishments, I've never been. I can honestly say I've never been.
And he does it with a straight face. I appreciate
it. That's true. That's true. I'll keep the reason why off that one because I think that's Birch 365 After Dark. But I've never been. That's
you and Britton Cubby. You have never.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Tanner and K2. Who knows? I don't know.
See, Frank, always a pleasure. Appreciate you jumping in, bud. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Thanks. Have a good one now.
That is
at C. Franklin News. Make sure you read Chris at NJ.com. Does a tremendous job.
NJ.com for Chris Franklin. Funny dude. All right, McMullen McDonald coming back. You know what we're going to do. We're going to put a bow on the show.